Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to First Universalist Church. Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is so wonderful to see all of these friendly and welcoming faces here this morning as we get started. Our prelude this morning is from Brock. It's a piece from John Legend. So please settle in, take a deep breath, and welcome to worship at First Universalist. Welcome. Welcome to the First Universalist Church of Rochester, where we are called to nurture the spirit and to serve the community. Whoever you are, we welcome you here this morning. Wherever you come from, we welcome you here. And whomever you love, whomever you love, we welcome you. And wherever your heart beats for the state of our country, of our city, of our world, we welcome you here this morning. It is good, it is good, it is good to be together today. Friends, if you are here for the first time, or maybe even for the second or the third time, we especially welcome you. Thank you so much for making your way to this online sacred community. We have a visitors form if you would like to fill it out that can be found in the chat. Please fill it out so we can welcome you beyond this sacred virtual space and offer you a more full welcome. As we gather this morning, as First Universalist Church, as a church community, we want to invite you to pop into the chat. Please offer a greeting, a hello, a how are you, I'm here. Let us know that you are here. So please pop into the chat, either at the bottom or the top, or sometimes even the side of your screen, and just let us know this morning that you are here, because we are so glad that you are here this morning. Welcome, welcome, welcome to worship at First Universalist Church. This morning, let us join hearts and voices in singing our opening hymn, hymn number 155, Circle Round for Freedom. This is a song of freedom, a song of relationship, so let us recognize that even as we are singing muted in our own homes, we are creating a song of freedom across our city, of Rochester, the country, and the world. So let us sing together hymn number 155, Circle Round for Freedom.
Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned, circle for release, circle
Good morning, everyone. It's so good to have you all here this morning. I'm Kitty Forbush, and I'm your worship associate this morning. There is so much to grieve for right now, not just in our own lives, our own losses, loss of loved ones, loss of touch, loss of security and stability, but also for the losses in our world, our community, and our city. So much mistrust and chaos. But grief can be a call to action. Out of pain, fear, and vulnerability can come the power to look to the future, to do what we can to ease suffering. In caring for each other with sympathy, love, and tenderness, we can energize our spirits to ask ourselves, what can I do? What can we do to guide us towards the light? It is here at our church that we can be held and lifted up. So come, let us worship together. Let our chalice flame, the symbol of our UU faith, be the light we need to lead us from fear and pain. Let its glow remind us that grief is not stagnant. It is a life process that helps us to heal from trauma, wounds, and losses, to be made stronger and more resilient. As Reverend Lane lights our chalice, please say together the chalice lighting words that you see on the screen or in the order of service. May we be a people of welcome, here to grow in heart and mind and spirit, and may we reach out to serve our community. Please join me in our affirmation of faith, followed by our doxology. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the source and meaning of life. Thus do we covenant with each other and with all. On the third Sunday of every month, we share our offering plate with an organization that our church is in partnership with. Today, our offering goes to support Reach Advocacy, an organization that advocates for and with chronically homeless people in the Rochester area, seeing that all are treated with dignity and respect. They work to create safe, financially sustainable housing options that put the needs of housing-deprived individuals at the center of the services they provide. In this time when so many are going without and where our economy is leaving too many behind, our generosity is needed now more than ever. Thank you for your gifts this morning. Please click the link in the chat to give online to First Universalist Church, or feel free to send a check to the church.
Good morning, Faith family. Today's story, I think, does a great job in illustrating, in the most heartfelt way, our seventh principle, respect for the interdependent web of which we are all a part. The story is The Invisible String by Patrice Karst, illustrated by Joanne Lou Vrytoff. Liza and Jeremy, the twins, were asleep one calm, quiet night. Suddenly, it began to rain very hard. thunder rumbled, and it got so loud it woke them up. "Mommy, Mommy," they cried as they ran to her. "Don't worry, you two. It's just the storm making all that noise. Go back to bed." "We want to stay close to you," said Jeremy. "We're scared." Mom said, "You know we're always together, no matter what." "But how can we be together when you're out here and we're in bed?" said Liza. Mom held something right in front of them and said, "This is how." Rubbing their sleepy eyes, the twins came closer to see what Mom was holding. I was about your age when my mom first told me about the invisible string. "I don't see a string," said Jeremy. "You don't need to see the invisible string. People who love each other are always connected by a very special string made of love." "But if you can't see it, how do you know it's there?" asked Liza. "Even though you can't see it with your eyes, you can feel it with your heart and know that you are always connected to everyone you love. When you're at school and you miss me, your love travels all the way along the string until I feel it tug on my heart. And when you tug it right back, we feel it in our hearts," said Jeremy. "Does Jasper the cat have an invisible string?" Liza asked. "She sure does," said Mom. "And best friends like me and Lucy?" asked Liza. "Best friends, too." "How far can the string reach?" "Everywhere and anywhere," Mom said. "Would it reach me even if I were a submarine captain deep in the ocean?" asked Jeremy. "Yes," Mom said, "even there." "Or a mountain climber?" "Even there." "A dancer in France?" "Even there." "A jungle explorer?" "Even there." "How about an astronaut in outer space?" "Yes, even there." Then Jeremy quietly asked, "Can my string reach all the way to Uncle Brian in heaven?" "Yes, even there." "Does the string go away when you're mad at us?" "Never," said Mom. "Love is stronger than anger, and as long as love is in your heart, the string will always be there." "Even when you get older and can't agree about things like what movie to see, or what game to play in the back seat, or what time to go to bed?" "Oh, that's right. You two should be in bed." And with that, they all laughed as Mom chased the twins back to their beds. Within a few minutes, they were asleep, even though the storm was still making the same loud noises outside. As they slept, they started dreaming of all the invisible strings they have, and all the strings their friends have, and their friends have, until everyone in the world was connected by invisible strings. And from deep inside, they could now clearly see that no one is ever alone. The end.
Friends, I want to invite you now into this reverent time of sharing the joys and the sorrows of our gathered community. I feel like this is really the time when we acknowledge our invisible strings, to our friends, to our neighbors, to other church members, towards one another, with ourselves. And so if you would like to, as we go through this time of joys and sorrows, you can place a hand over your heart to listen from this heart-centered place. As I place stones into a bowl, I will read aloud some of our joys and our sorrows. I'll invite you to share a joy or a sorrow in the chat, and I hope I will be able to see it this morning. And if I miss it, my apologies. We're certainly just doing the best we can in real time. So let us enter into this time of sharing the joys and the sorrows of our gathered community. I share a joy this morning that Julie Kleinhans received her absentee ballot in the mail yesterday. A change is gonna come. A joy from Nuke. A thank you and shout out to Steve Farrington for his suggestion in Vertus Robinson's first rib season. Thank you, Vertus, to consider treating racism like we do alcoholism. I was in despair until he said this. Racial sobriety, what a concept. Hold John Luke's in our heart. My beloved first cousin Linda is recovering from COVID. Oh, a joy from Connie Volk. What a joy to have 11 participants in the Path to Membership class yesterday. From Lisa Gwinner, my beautiful new wheelchair arrived this week. So happy to have this mobility enhancement in my life. And we are happy with you, Lisa. Joy from Jillian Beeman, happy to have made it through the first 5 weeks of hybrid learning with my kids. My God, let us keep all of our parents in our thoughts and in our prayers if you are the praying type. Oh, a joy from Theo. Again, it was a joy to share time with Vertus Robinson this past Friday. A joy from Rachel Arado. She mailed her ballot today. Please, everyone, have a voting plan. A sorrow from Jean Ott. My dad's cousin, Roger Burton, died October 2nd. His funeral is this Friday, October 3rd. Jean, we will be keeping your family in our hearts. A sorrow and a joy from Joanna Connolly. Yesterday, I got to hug my first hug since March, my friend in hospice, who will be leaving us soon. And we are holding you, Johanna, and your friend in our hearts. A joy from Emma Berry, a joy to make homemade raspberry ice cream from a late raspberry crop from our backyard yesterday. A joy to attend the service again. Welcome back. And I will drop one stone into our bowl for a sorrow that 2 of our medics that we host at First Universalist Church were arrested yesterday in the midst of a protest and sent to a center in Canandaigua. Both are home safe and relatively okay this morning, but just holding in our hearts all of the trauma that happens as folks are being arrested at protests around our city and around our country. From Lois Baum, a friend's 51-year-old son died suddenly. They'd already lost 2 other children. Lois, holding your friends in our hearts. A joy from Krish Gallagher. Her daughter Kelsey will soon be in New York State in preparation for her wedding. Congratulations, Kelsey. Holding the joy of new beginnings as a community. And then from Melissa Parrish, please keep my son Naday in your prayers as he struggles with some emotional challenges at school. Keeping Naday in our hearts, and you, Melissa. And then friends, I will drop one final stone into the bowl to represent all of the joys and the sorrows left unspoken in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts. May all be held in the heart of love. Friends, I'd like to invite you to just take a deep breath with me as we enter into a time now of prayer and meditation. Settle into your seats wherever you are. Take a moment to check in with the state of your heart. To sit and listen for a second as to how you are doing in this moment. Spirit, source, divine resource, common human good, that which binds us together. Open our hearts today to the grief of our days, to the losses that are near, to the loved ones we miss, to the changes in our days. Open our hearts and allow the grief in. Open our hearts to the griefs of our city, our community, to a city that leads in rates of childhood poverty, to a community hurting in the midst of so much housing insecurity and housing deprivation, to a racial justice uprising following the death of Daniel Prude, to a school system that is broken and struggling to serve the children that need its support most at this time and in all times. Open our hearts and allow the grief to enter in. Open our hearts to the griefs of our country, to an America that is so deeply polarized and divided right now, to the fears about what is to come in the months ahead, to the nationwide uprisings with leadership from those the system marginalizes, to the feelings of deep betrayal, mistrust, and disappointment. Open our hearts to the grief and allow the grief to enter in. Open our hearts to the griefs of the world, to the earth which is sorely hurting and in need, deep need of healing, to the many countries and peoples racked with violence, poverty, and leaders who care more about political power than the people that they serve, to all of the ways humanity can be extractive rather than in right relationship. Open our hearts to the grief and allow the grief to enter in. This grief, this pain is a source of strength. Let our hearts break many times over. Let us lament the times when our hearts grew cold and could not let the grief in. Let us return to this well of grief, over and over and over. Open our hearts and allow the grief to enter in. Amen. Blessed be, and may it be so. Let us now join in some silence together. We may know the states of our hearts. Let us join in this imperfect silence, holding ourselves, our community, our country, and our world in deep, tender care. Let us join in silence together this morning. Dear ones, our hymn of contemplation this morning is hymn number 336, All My Memories of Love. Let us join in singing this hymn together.
All my memories of love hang upon high stars. All the souls I've lost to tears now the autumn jars. And the air around me here begins with their song. Sing again their nameless tunes, sing again and strong. Willows in September touch the water clear, set among the rushes tall of the flowing year. Rising up from sunlit west comes the shadowed sun, running toward me silently, love to fortify. Many are the graceful hearts hung upon this tree, and it seems there's room for one on these branches free. And the sky above the tree, whether wet or bright, is my ease and comforting, my good news and light.
Our reading this morning is actually a song, but I'm just going to read out the lyrics to you all, as I feel as if it helps us maybe to focus on the words and to hear it maybe in a different way than we would usually hear it. So this is Ella's song, traditionally sung by Sweet Honey in the Rock, and the words and the music are by Bernice Johnson Regan. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Until the killing of Black men, Black mothers' sons, is as important as the killing of white men, white mothers' sons. That which touches me most is that I had the chance to work with people, passing on to others that which was passed on to me. To me, young people come first. They have the courage where we fail. And if I can but shed some light as they carry us through the gale. The older I get, the better I know that the secret of my going on is when the reins are in the hands of the young who dare to run against the storm. Not needing to clutch for power, not needing the light just to shine on me. I need to be one in the number as we stand against tyranny. Struggling myself don't mean a whole lot. I've come to realize that teaching others to stand up and fight is the only way my struggle survives. I'm a woman who speaks in a voice, and I must be heard. At times, I can be quite difficult. I'll bow to no man's word. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Rock, thank you so much for choosing music to hold all that is going on with us this morning. Thank you. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And before I start my sermon this morning, I just want to lift up a word of gratitude to our membership committee and to the folks from finance and from our Faith and Action Council, our social justice group, that showed up yesterday to share your stories during a beautiful Path to Membership class where we had 11 folks attending. It was a wonderful morning. It was just inspiring. It lifted me up. It inspired me. And I'm so grateful to each one of you who's attending church this morning, who took part in the class, as well as those who made it happen. We are just a fabulous congregation. I am just in awe of all the stories of welcome that were shared yesterday. So friends, this morning, I want to share a story with you all from an experience of mine, from a time when my grief turned into action, and from a time when my commitment to justice really got to the heart of my grief. And so I want to start by painting a picture with you all. So if you could, I'm just going to ask you to use your imagination with me this morning. If it helps you to kind of soften your gaze or close your eyes, great. Or if it just helps you to sit here, that's great too. But I'll ask you to bring to mind an image of a city park in the summertime. The grass is green and lush. There is a small playground in the corner, a black fence surrounding the park, and tall apartment buildings all around. A ring of people is gathered in the center, some of them mourning, some of them showing up because of their commitment to justice, some connected to the family of those who died, other organizers who hold that middle ground of tending to the emotional lives of those who have lost someone and connecting their struggles to a longer lineage of loss and struggles for justice. The crowd is mixed, racially and age-wise. There are children running around the periphery, elders, young folks, teenagers, young adults, those in between. We are gathered to mourn. It is a somber experience just days before a 13-year-old boy named Tyree King had been killed, shot and killed by the police. His mother and grandmother are there. His cousins and aunties are there. The news narratives have been that this boy and a group of his friends were armed with a BB gun and had held up a local store owner for $10 worth of candy. The police were called, and the autopsy would later show that young Tyree King had been shot in the back, most likely while he was running away. Yet the narrative in the news is one of a grown man who used a realistic-looking weapon. The police should have been scared. I stand in this circle, and words of encouragement are shared with the family. Space is made for people to share their stories and lift up their experiences. There are moments of silence when no one knows what to say. There are times when we are singing because we know we must join our voices together. And I had held it together up until then, steeled my heart to what had gone on. I came to this circle as an activist who regularly showed up, as someone who was connected to the movement, but not necessarily to this family. I could engage in this circle as an act of protest until this child's peewee football coach arrived with his teammates in uniform. Young Black boys aged 7 to 13, all dressed in blue and silver with their pads on and their uniforms ready for a game. Their coach stood before us, a man whose volunteer job it is to lead young boys in an example of what it looks like to be a grown man. He stood before us and he told us about Tyree's kind heart, his sense of fair play, his love of mischief. And he was surrounded by these children, none of them more than 80 or 90 pounds, many of them so small. Tyree himself weighed 87 pounds, soaking wet. And that was when the grief hit me. That was the moment that I realized this was no grown man. This was a child. He was a child. And there were his teammates, all small children, learning to play football like many young people do. I was looking into their faces and seeing these young, bright eyes. Looking into these young eyes whose experience of this situation I could not begin to imagine or to understand. It cut past all the intellectualizing I had done about how Black lives mattered and who to show up for. And it cut right to this tender place of seeing what violence does to our communities, seeing what violence does to a family, seeing what violence does to a peewee football team, seeing these children who missed Tyree too. Until the killing of Black men, Black mothers' sons is as important as the killing of white men, white mothers' sons. Sometimes I wonder what it would look like for white hearts to break in the midst of all the loss of our Black and brown neighbors are facing. It seems like our world might look quite different. Sometimes I wonder what it must be like to be Black or brown in our community and to hear from white friends or coworkers, "Oh, I'm so sorry," about a loss at the hands of police, and then to see those same people feeling sorry but not taking risks, the same ways that are asked by Black and brown and Indigenous people of color. There are days when the weight of the world, the grief of our community feels like so much. Is it the best thing to do to harden our hearts? Can we keep them completely open to the grief? Is there another way? This month we have been diving into grief. We have been exploring what it looks like in our days, in this time period, and I want to really get specific here today and talk about what we are carrying as neighbors, friends, community members, family members are dying all around us. And the reason for their deaths are often preventable injustices, ways systems chose or are designed not to serve the very people they profess to serve. My heart turns this way because we are in a pandemic that has certainly lifted up class and racial inequities. Coronavirus disproportionately affects Black and brown communities as well as working class people, people who have never stopped working, for whom there has been no shutdown. The lapse in our economy has left so many who were just teetering on the edge of poverty impoverished. And it is just infuriating because so much of this could have been prevented. So much of this could have been planned for and accounted for. It has been a failure of the systems that are put in place to support life that we have not been provided for in ways where people don't have to choose between working in an unsafe environment or getting evicted or going hungry. And I have to say, if it's coming across to you clear enough, I am in the anger stage and phase of grief around this. And I really want to invite you too to see where you are. Are you feeling angry? Are you feeling in denial? Are you feeling like a bargaining place? See where you are. I imagine at times you were angry too, because perhaps this has affected your lives in ways you didn't expect. You are in Zoom worship right now. I am preaching in an empty room. So there is at least one way that this is affecting your life, and I imagine that there are so many more. Our grief in the midst of injustice is necessary. Grief for those around us who are literally losing their lives, whether to a disease or to police brutality or to violence from any number of forces, or to any number of forces that destroy life. Our grief in the midst of injustice is necessary because it is the well we can return to when we wonder why we continue to fight for justice. When we wonder what this fight for justice is all about. It is proof of our humanity in a sea of chaotic messages that tell us that we have no business grieving for others. It is proof that we have hearts to break. Proof of the invisible string that connects each one of us to one another that Rev Michelle referred to in our story this morning. Proof that we are interconnected. It is due to the absence of this grief that I believe we are still seeing the injustices we are seeing in our country. In those moments when we close off our hearts as we hear stories of children being kept in cages separately from their parents simply for immigrating to this country, in those moments when we close off our hearts when we learn of a new mass shooting in some other city or town, the grief is overwhelming. The easier way to keep on living life as we know it is to eventually numb our hearts to pain, to pretend like it's not all actually happening. I truly believe that if we felt the pain of our world and our country to its fullest extent, we would have the motivation we need to change these systems that continually perpetuate injustice. We would have mass uprisings across the country. See, our grief is powerful. It feels at times like it might overwhelm or overtake. I know that feeling. But the reality is that feeling our grief is powerful. Feeling our way into the heartbreak puts us in touch with our common humanity. It is an antidote to white supremacy, a force that has invaded all of our lives, and a force that would tell me I am separate from people of other races and my race is superior. I need only grieve for the lives lost of white people, but the lives lost of Black and Brown and Indigenous folks, those are separate. Claiming our grief has the power to overcome this narrative on a heart and soul level. It rearranges the interior heart space of those who have internalized white supremacy. Grief has that kind of power. It is so important for us to claim this power. Because as Unitarian Universalists and as Universalists, we know that love is at the center of all that we do. Love wins, love is powerful, and grief itself, feeling grief, allowing grief in, is an act of love. It is a way to say that the lives of those lost and the lives of those disenfranchised by the systems that should be supporting them, those lives matter. We respect the inherent worth and dignity of each person, and we know that there are ways our city, our country, our world have grown out of right relationship and privilege the inherent worth and dignity of some over others. We are called to justice, equity, and compassion in human relations by our second principle of Unitarian Universalism. To grieve is to bring that compassion to our relationships with our neighbors, with our loved ones, and those around us who are suffering. We grieve because we know we can grow as human beings into right relationship with one another. And it feels significant to just state from the outset that our Black and Brown siblings have had to hold too much grief in these days. That holding the grief over the loss of loved ones and neighbors alongside navigating a country and a community often that is not designed for you to thrive is exhausting. It's exhausting to have one's dignity and worth questioned regularly, daily, even momentarily sometimes. Seeing ways that those who look like you, their lives are devalued, brings a deep soul question about whether or not you are next, whether or not your child is next, whether or not your loved ones are next, whether or not your neighbor is next. And I see the ways this time period has really brought some of the exhaustion to the fore, as well as the grief. So I feel like we really have to hold this grief together, my friends. We really have to share some of the burden, because it is a huge key to how we will get free. Friends, for each and every one of us, we must be tending to our hearts in this time period. We must be listening within to see what we hear and what we are feeling. Are we in touch with our grief? Are we hardening our hearts? Taking time to pause and to check in is invaluable throughout our days. Taking the time to be present to our hearts and to ask what we need is a survival skill that ensures we are embracing wholehearted living, that ensures we are keeping love at the center in our personal lives and in our community. Sometimes the grief is too much, and we are in need of care. Pause to take that care. Sometimes the fear and the inaccurate thought that the grief will overtake us is blocking us from feeling what we need to feel. Check your heart about that too. See what it is that you need to keep leaning into grief for your neighbor. See what it is that you need to keep leaning into the tenderness that this time is calling us to. The writer and public intellectual Brené Brown gives us a tool for this. She calls our attention to the strong back and the soft front. Keeping our backs strong in our foundational values, in what we believe in what guides us through our lives. Yet keeping our front soft and open, allowing grief and tenderness to guide us ever deeper into the healing and the transformation this moment and our very humanity are calling us to. Dear ones, may you know griefs in our community, our country, and our world. May you go into this day and into this week holding the loss in your hearts. May you know the power of this grief and harness it to heal and transform, to gain back a piece of your humanity that may have been stolen or taken away. Let the love of our neighbor and our world bring us towards more justice, more equity, more compassion. And may we move through this life with a strong back and a soft front. Amen. Blessed be, and may it be so. Dear ones, our final hymn this morning is hymn number 97. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. This song comes out of the spiritual tradition and just gets to the heart of grief in a way that only music can. So please join us in singing muted from wherever you find ourselves, creating a song of lament and honesty across our city of Rochester, the country, and the world. Let us sing together hymn number 97. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child.
Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel
Friends, as we extinguish our chalice this morning, please join me in unison in saying our chalice extinguishing words printed in your order of service or on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our hearts with its message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls to the world we live in until we are together again. Friends, I just want to invite you now into an embodied practice of connecting with one another. So if you would turn your screen to gallery view, and if you would just reach out to the edges of your screen, I feel like I have to really reach, but I'm connecting with you all right now. Let us be connected in this moment. Let none of us be alone. Friends, this morning, as you go forward, may you be in touch with the power of your grief. May you feel it, may you know it, may you befriend it, and may it guide you towards more justice, more compassion, and more equity in your days, in our world, in our city, in our country, because our city, our country, our world needs you. May you go forth from this day knowing that you are loved and bringing that love wherever you may go. Amen. Blessed be, and may it be so. And as we end our time together, I would just invite you to type into the chat as we close our service, I grieve with my neighbor. I grieve with my neighbor. Let us join in listening to a beautiful postlude that Brock will play on the piano.